So speaking of wars, we've got one just around the corner from us. It's shocking to me how close it is to the UK and how hot this war is. I mean, you wouldn't know it by looking at me, but in my spare time, I like to do some breakdancing. And I follow some of the young kids that breakdance around the world. And one's this Ukrainian kid. And up until a year and a half ago, he was in Ukraine complaining about lockdown and COVID, and he was doing his thing. And now all he posts on his Instagram page are these harrowing scenes of, entire cities just blown out, of him in this, down in the subway during the bombings. And we have this whole thing going on over here. And so what do you see when you see this hot war happening right now in Europe's backyard? And what are the ramifications of it? Or is it just a distraction for China, which we should keep our eyes on?
Well, we should be multitasking, to your point. And we should be smart enough and capable enough, competent enough to keep our eye on, multiple crises. The Ukraine conflict, look, it's interesting because, as an example, I had my boys over in London last summer for quite a while, and I took them to the Imperial War Museum.
Love it.
Yeah, it's a great museum. I tell people all the time, if you're getting anywhere near London, make sure you go. But there's their World War I exhibit in particular. We were walking through, and the Ukraine conflict was obviously going on. The Russians at the time were blockading wheat shipments. So there was, some real concern over potential starvation problems, obviously, and not to mention just sort of this idea that it was becoming a war of entrenchment, attrition. And so we're walking through, and I'm trying to talk to the boys, and they're sharp, but you're trying to get them to understand, right? What's old is new again. Life tends to repeat itself in patterns. And here we're looking at this World War exhibit, and they're talking about the starvation and the lack of food. They're talking about the war of attrition and the fact that they're fighting and making maybe, gaining a couple of yards in the course of a month. And you're trying to explain how bizarre it is that we're now right back into that type of conflict. Nobody saw a ground war in Europe
with trenches. They got trenches, don't they? They have trenches.
With trenches.
I know.
Yes. It's absolutely insane. But I'm not sure, at the end of the day, I'm certainly not smart enough when you start theorizing on where it's all going. Putin doesn't seem to mind the idea of a war of attrition. I suspect that he and his cronies think that's the only way they're going to win this, is by grinding down the West to the point where we do lose interest or get distracted by something else. Give up on the level of resource, which is astounding, that is being provided to the Ukrainians. So nobody's really talking about an exit ramp or a pathway here. And, you could argue that, look, nobody here, at least in the U.S., where everybody's waving Ukrainian flags and they've got Ukrainian bumper stickers and we stand with Ukraine. Well, of course we do, because they're incredibly brave and they're putting up a fight that nobody saw or thought was capable. But at the same time, when the Russians took Crimea, nobody gave a shit over here, right? Not even the administration, really. They didn't really care that there were Russian troops in eastern Ukraine for all these years. So, now we do care because we like our stories simple, right? It's like a movie script. And so we want to be able to follow it. And this is something we can follow. But I don't know where it goes to. The U.S. public in particular doesn't have a lot of patience. And so I'm not sure where this ends unless Zelensky and Putin show an interest in something other than total victory. Because I don't see the Russians ever leaving Crimea.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. For me, it seems that the U.S. just loves this because it's a great tool to irritate what is still an enemy, which is Russia. Albeit less powerful than they used to be, they still are a thorn in the U.S.'s side. And now they can actually do it because they got someone willing to fight a proxy war and give them some money, and they can really make it difficult. I mean, is this Putin's Afghanistan to a certain extent that we were in? I mean, this is going to cost them a lot of bandwidth, a lot of political capital, and all we have to do is write some checks, and it's going to be irritating for him for 5 more years or however long this lasts. So that's one question. I will let you answer. The second thing is, I've had a couple guests on my show that had some CIA experience, like Andrew Bustamante and even Jim Rickards, who spent some time, I think, consulting for the CIA back in the day. And they said, look, this is a propaganda war happening right now in America and the UK that Ukraine has a chance or they're fighting a good fight. But the reality is that's not happening, and Russia will just grind this away. And it's only a matter of time before Russia is successful, and they're not going to get out. Also, because Putin just doesn't have any choice. So I don't know. I'm just curious what you think of some of those narratives. I do look at the news now with like askance now, because I'm reading the Times of London and, well, the New York Times. I don't even know why I read that thing anymore, but I do. And I'm always thinking, this feels like a narrative. It always has this, oh, it's a hopeful thing and they're going to make it and they're the freedom fighters. And it feels like it's being spun to me in the West of what's happening in Ukraine, and the reality is a different picture.
Yeah, there's definitely a narrative, right?
Yeah.
And, Zelensky has done a great job of capturing and framing that narrative.
Yeah.
And with a great deal of top cover support from the West media. But I think that the hard truth, the reality is that if it is a war of attrition, if this does grind on, then the odds are not in Ukrainian military's favor, right? With a caveat. The caveat being, unless the West has an insatiable appetite to continue to provide an ever-increasing level of support and hardware. And, the EU is providing shells faster than they can manufacture them. And, we're getting close to, the top tier of our hardware that we're going to provide. We've already handed over a Patriot missile system. And so I think that you have to ask yourself, is that possible? Is it possible that we continue doing this for the next 3, 4, 5 years, right? I don't know what the answer to that is. So I'm certainly open to the idea that the war of attrition favors the Russian military, in part because, look, we know over the decades and decades, how much they can suffer. And the Russian population has always shown this bizarre ability to suffer. And so unless they get to their Afghan moment, where the moms and others, pressure the regime and they feel as if they're losing control of the public, perhaps, that will be one thing that causes Putin to back off. But what does that mean? Again, it's highly unlikely in the real world, not in somebody's imaginary hoped-for world, but it's unlikely in the real world that he'll give up Crimea. And it's unlikely that they're going to get all the troops out of eastern Ukraine. So, but if you do that, if you say that in a way, if you say, well, they should look for a negotiated settlement, then you're accused of being a Putin puppet. And here in the U.S., you're accused by both the left and the right, right? The Ukraine conflict has turned the Democrat Party here in the U.S. into a war machine, right? Nobody's supporting Ukrainians in the war effort more than the Democrats. So it's an interesting dynamic, but
yeah,
God, I don't know. I just I don't see where it goes without some real hard discussions about how do we find a pathway to a settlement.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real, and he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, it's Brian Rose, founder of the DeFi Academy. I've told you my 4-week crypto bootcamp is amazing,
But don't take my word for it. This is what my students are saying.
The DeFi Academy was an amazing experience for me. It took me totally out of my comfort zone.
In this course, I was challenged, I was held accountable, and pushed to do things that honestly weren't always easy.
It's been phenomenal, and I can't believe we're already up on our 4 weeks. It has flown by.
Going through this DeFi accelerator by far was one of the best courses I've taken.
You do this course, you really get into the nitty-gritty of the activities that will make you comfortable with decentralized finance.
Thank you so much to Brian and everyone at London Real and the DeFi Academy for even putting together an amazing course like this.
Anybody else that wants to do it, please sign up. It is well worth the money.